we often look at, and I've looked at Brickell with you before, and I've always felt that faux luxury is also another big problem area.
The ones that are trying to reach those record high prices and, have strong competition within the building, those are the ones that, either need to take it off the market or become a bit more realistic.
It's not the Brickell that it was even 10 years ago. 10 years ago.
5 years ago. It's really changed a lot.
And it's going to keep changing. These buildings, it went wrong. Where did it go wrong? What happened?
Brickell is finally stepping in and growing into its shoes. And I think, the right person will see that. If you're on one of the busiest streets in downtown, you've got cars coming in and out, it's only going to be a mess.
To remove the name from the building has to systematically be seen as saying, you know what, this is luxurious. I can't be convinced just because it says something on the side of the building. Welcome to our mid-year report. This is 2025. I am David Siddons, president of the David Siddons Group, and I'm here with Shakira Sanchez, who is our territory manager for the urban core, Brickell, downtown, and Edgewater. And what we're going to get into is the state of the market. The million-dollar question, what's happening in the market? So we're going to look at buyers, sellers, and investors, and we're going to run through all the different price points. Shakira, thank you for coming in to do this. I know you've got your notes, so you're ready. You've got all your information. Let's go in. What's been happening over the last 6 months within the urban core market? Tell us what's the general sentiment on the street and what are you seeing?
Well, I think overall, it's still a pretty good market. I mean, I'm still seeing demand from end users mostly. I think what I've noticed the most is the investor clients are perhaps a bit more on the sidelines, waiting a bit for the market conditions to be more favorable for them. But I'm still seeing strong demand with end users. And thankfully, I've also seen that sellers are more reasonable. I'm seeing this more with the sellers that perhaps don't use their properties full time. So it's like a second home, a vacation property. And given the new market conditions of higher HOA fees, higher carrying costs just overall, it just makes more sense for them to sell. So the conversation there is a lot more data centric. And I also think that they are more reasonable. So we've been seeing very good results with them. I think the, property owners that are trying to go for record pricing and it's just not a custom unit or there's an oversupply within that building, those are the ones that are really seeing or experiencing the hardest times.
We seem to have across Miami a lot of, and systematically we can reflect on, and I know you talk to the other territory managers throughout Miami and you guys all communicate with each other. There seems to be a systematic personality disorder where there's a lot of sellers in Miami who overreach. They seem to be convinced that their baby is the most beautiful, as the saying goes, and then they're struggling to sell, sitting on the market and then having to adjust. Given that you're dealing with so many, let's call it investor class product, because 80% of the urban core seems to be rental product. Given that the interest rates are 8%, I'm sure many of the buyers out there and even the sellers are thinking to themselves, all right, how is this impacting me right now? Let's start and go through the price points. And I'd love you to explain to the audience, and again, we can get into the experiences that you've personally had. What are we seeing what are the numbers tell us in these markets? Start off with your lowest price point and now let's just work through.
Sure. So I think at first glance, you would think that the market is not performing, or better said, not outperforming last year. But based on the data, almost every single price point has actually outperformed last year's benchmark, which is impressive and perhaps telling of where things are. The price point that was the only one to decrease from last year was the 1 to 3 million, which is most likely that investor grade product, the buildings that are not on the coastline, that really don't have something different to offer. So it's kind of gets lost in all of the availability, right? But overall, I'm seeing the properties priced from 3 to 6. In Brickell, for example, that's going to get you a waterfront view in a very solid building with a strong community, little turnover, little investors. Those are the strongest ones and have actually outperformed last year.
What are the buildings that you've seen people being drawn to? What are the buildings that the 3 to 6 buyers have been focusing on? And obviously, I also want to understand, what about the 1 to 3? What are the good buildings and what are the bad buildings?
So the best building in the 1 to 3 range is my top pick, 1010 Brickell. I think it's a fabulous building that can really cater to a lot of people, but predominantly families. I think the amenities are wonderful. And one of the main themes that I see with showings when we're working with sellers is, everyone knows that HOA fees have gone up. Buyers just want to justify it. And I think that if you have the amenities that are well kept in a building that has good security, good personnel, in really the best location, it's right in the center of the entire neighborhood, I think that's a solid choice.
And you've sold a number of, again, experiences that we are the dominant real estate team, or one of the top 3 or 4 dominant real estate teams in the whole of South Florida. You've been selling in Brickell 1010. How many units so far? And then I think you've got another one on the way.
So we just had the pleasure of selling 2 units. We listed another one, which is 3501. It's one of the premier lines. And we're also going to be listing 4105. So these are 2 great examples of larger floor plans for a family. It's very hard to come across a solid building in Brickell that could give you the opportunity to convert it into a 4-bedroom. And these 2 units do just that.
And what do you pay dollar per square foot? So people can understand, because I know a lot of buyers will come in and they don't discriminate and they're thinking, what can I buy in different markets? What's worthy of my dollar and what's actually going to hold value? Because I know a lot of buyers are concerned about, a falling knife scenario.
Sure. So, although Brickell has had significant appreciation, if we look at South Florida holistically, it's still a value play. And the fact that you could find a solid building, a solid property, under $1,000 a square foot, which is what you can find in this building, I think that that's very attractive for families because it works for them. There's a great floor plan. It's a good layout. And for those who need to walk to work, it's right off of the avenue. So, we've worked with a lot of families that work locally in the area. So it's very convenient for them. The amenities, you have 3 levels. They're all fabulous amenities, very well maintained, which is something that might not always be the case in Brickell. Yep. So they stand apart there. And I think one of the most important things about the building is how well it's managed. We worked with a client who was previously a board member. Given that we've represented several families, we've had the opportunity to learn more about the building. And it was one of the few buildings, to my knowledge, that did not have an increase in HOA fees in the last year. So, all of these things are what the buyers in today's market are really looking into because they are dealing with higher carrying costs.
And I don't want this to make it all about one building. Give us another couple of buildings that you think are solid buildings of performance and sales in 2025.
So, if we go up the price bracket, my best recommendation would be either the Four Seasons, Santa Maria, Bristol Tower. These 3 buildings might not be the newest buildings, but still, to this day, are perhaps the best performing buildings. And I think importantly, people enjoy their life there. It's all 3. The security is fantastic. They know what real service is all about. And I think, again, in today's day, people want to know that what they're investing in is going to give them a good return and not just about the money, about the enjoyment.
These buildings seem to be holding their numbers, and I think they follow the characteristic traits that we have done when we look at what is the characteristic attributes of the best performing buildings in Miami, and they all seem to carry the same traits. Again, Four Seasons, Santa Maria, Bristol Tower, they have large units, they have big floor plans, lots of primary residence. The space that it sits on for Santa Maria and Bristol Tower, pretty generous. Four Seasons, not that massive, but it feels substantial because the Four Seasons service that it has with 2 pools, the Equinox gym located in-house, several restaurants, it feels like there's plenty of space for residents, and it does feel very resorty, very luxurious.
Absolutely, yeah. And one thing to that note, and this is something that maybe at first glance you don't consider, but those 3 buildings also have a community that is able to invest into their units. So there's a high number of units that are not just the original condition. These are either combined units, fully upgraded units, or fully remodeled. So you are buying something different that even in its original condition was a wonderful option. So I think it's also telling that, it's a strong community that's there.
Without getting into the older buildings which have rising HOA fees, the ones from the 80s and 90s, which we know systematically we tell our clients stay away from those. Those are a bad bet, and most of those sit under $1 million anyway. What are the buildings that sit in the 1 to 3 and even maybe the above that you think need to be avoided?
I think buildings that don't give you the best view or the best service or that are very cookie cutter. And I'll mention a few, and they're actually newer. They were done in the last 10 years, which is Reach and Rise, which are 2 towers, part of Brickell City Center. But, we were even dealing with it personally, where selling them is actually a challenge because there's really not a big difference amongst the units. And you're really not buying there for the views. I think you're buying there more so for the, it's a newer building. It's right above the Brickell City Center. But the reality is you could get to anywhere in Brickell within a 10 to 15 minute walk. So living right upstairs really isn't all that.
Yeah, we often look at, and I've looked at Brickell with you before, and I've always felt that faux luxury is also another big problem area. And I will say it, SLS, Lux, SLS, I find there's a lot of what they perceive as luxury product that's faux luxury, and I don't think it hits the mark, and as a result, slow sales in those markets.
Absolutely.
Has inventory, although we've seen sales actually perform pretty well, which actually does surprise me because there are other markets where we've actually seen sales drop. What about inventory levels? Are we seeing more inventory coming into the market? Are we seeing more expired listings happening? What's the story there?
We are seeing expired listings. We are seeing, units down the market a bit longer. Nothing substantial, but I think it just speaks to having realistic conversations with owners specifically, because if you don't have anything different to offer that buyer and you're just another unit in the same line in the same building, it's just a matter of time until you either have to reduce the price or, find someone that's good timing, right? Where you're not competing against other owners, but that's very hard to do. So the ones that are trying to reach those record high prices and, have strong competition within the building, those are the ones that, either need to take it off the market or become a bit more realistic on their approach.
Can we share some statistics on the expired inventory levels and the number of sales that we've seen? Do you have some of that data?
One did stand out because it was a decent amount of the expired listings, which was part of the new building, Aston Martin Residences. So this is a good sense of what's happening when a new construction building comes into the market and everyone is pricing it differently, right? Mm-hmm. So I'm seeing a lot of expired listings there, and it's most likely due to pricing, and you've got a decent amount of resales there, so that's always a challenge. But other than that, it's a lot of buildings that don't have anything out of the ordinary.
Going in to understand the market, the number of expired listings, and we've got hundreds of expired listings that has happened across the urban core over the last 5-6 months. It seems to me that there's mismatching pricing according to what the market can carry? Or is it just an incredible excess of supply?
It could be both. I think it depends on the building, and that's part of our approach. We get very granular about this, but holistically, it's going to be a combination of, you're dealing with competing neighbors that most likely either are more motivated than you or more realistic.
Yeah.
And, it's different. Condos are different than single family homes.
Yeah, certainly this neighborhood is the most affordable. When we look at the most affordable neighborhoods for buyers to get into in Miami, Brickell, downtown and Edgewater, that urban core is absolutely there. When you talk about ultra luxury, there's not been a lot of luxury sales. $6 to $10 million. How many sales have we seen in that whole market this year?
Less than 5.
Yeah, it is. I think on your record, you'd show me there was like 3 sales that we had. Right. We had, one, funnily enough, we had one at Aston Martin, which was a massive discount. We had one at 1000 Museum that we sold.
Right.
That came in at just under $6 million. Actually at $6 million. We had one at 900 Biscayne. And then we had one more that happened and again it was consider it was a 4-season sale. Yeah. So that obviously tells us that market is not a particularly present market when it comes to luxury. And then obviously a 10 and above, forget it.
Right.
However, you just had a sale over $10 million in the Brickell market. Yes. And I want to get into that. We'll skirt on the luxury, but it only happens in a certain type of product.
Absolutely.
Okay, what is that product? What's going on with that product? And what are the products that you're really pushing and that we're pushing in that urban core that makes sense to justify spending more than $10 million?
I mean, I think right off the bat, it's the fact that Brickell is still a bargain compared to other primary neighborhoods in South Florida. But two, I think there's a very exciting opportunity with the ultra luxury market because Brickell historically has not had a lot of ultra luxury towers, and those that exist today are still outperforming even the newer ones by a decent amount. So it's a lot of what we like to recommend to our clients, which is hospitality branded condos that just naturally embed that level of service in, with the community, right? So I think...
And you still haven't told me, she still hasn't told me, folks, what's that actual product? Is it the resale product or is it something else? I'm kind of baiting you in this conversation because we know perfectly well that the product that we're both dealing with, I've dealt with a dozen sales in this building and you've just handled a sale in this other building that we're talking about. What is the genre of product that is now coming into this market that we've never seen before to sell it over $10 million?
It's new construction hospitality branded condos, which we certainly need in this neighborhood and have been received well.
Why are these clients buying this product? Because up to this point, we haven't seen it. What is the demographic change and what is the behavioral change? This sale that you've just done a sale just over $11 million at the St. Regis new condo, which is to be ready in 2028. Tell me about that story. So for all those people watching, what was the pull for that particular transaction to happen?
Well, I do like to, honor my client's privacy, but I think the most important thing is the opportunity that there are not any truly comparable properties to what is coming. I mean, everything that can compete with a St. Regis product or a Mandarin Oriental product is going to be, almost 30 years old or 20 years old. Mm-hmm. So I think when you look at a neighborhood that is so strong like Brickell, that is anchored by the financial district, and we're seeing a significant amount of investment really, and, more of a promising future, the best years ahead of itself, I think that's exciting for anyone that is considering Miami to be their primary home or at least an area where they want to spend most of their time, because it is a fabulous community that is close to really all of the other primary markets as well. Yeah. And I think it can be very similar for a lot of people when they relocate to Miami. Every neighborhood in Miami has its own personality and wonderful characteristics. I think Brickell is a really nice combination of what is new, and what's really where Miami is heading. You can do everything in Brickell.
It's not the Brickell that it was even 10 years ago.
No.
10 years ago.
5 years ago. It's really changed a lot.
And it's going to keep changing. And the numbers now, when we look at the dollar per square foot, for those who are focusing on new construction, is now around, $2,500 a square foot?
Yeah, $3,000. I mean, these are record prices, which, again, at first glance, you want to dive deeper and understand it better. But when you look at South Florida as a whole, you see all of the businesses that are coming, the office towers, and really a decent amount of these businesses are going to be down the street from these buildings. This is all very important. And so I think residential and commercial real estate, it's like a dance. They both help each other. And I think that for the first time in its history as a neighborhood, Brickell is finally stepping in and growing into its shoes. And I think, the right person will see that.
So we've had buildings that now we see them hitting the mark. We've had, close to a dozen sales at the Mandarin Oriental. You've had this sale at St. Regis. Resort living at scale. We're talking about around $2,500 a square foot now. Competing buildings out there in the market. Obviously we're doing this report covering other neighborhoods like Coconut Grove and Miami Beach, which we've just covered. And there we're talking about $3,500 a square foot or more. If you want the Four Seasons, for example, in Coconut Grove, it's now over $3,500 a square foot. Again, it's quite a small footprint for that project. Or if you want the Four Seasons in Surfside, you're talking now over, last sales were around $5,200 a square foot. New condo construction anywhere around $5,000 to $6,000 a square foot. This at $2,500 is significantly less than what you will pay in any other neighborhood for what we'd call an ultra luxury full resort at scale hospitality branded condo.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's spot on. And what's even better is also knowing that it shares similar characteristics to those projects you just mentioned. You're right on the waterfront. You're in, one of the primary neighborhoods of South Florida. You're in a neighborhood that's continuing to grow, expand, invest back into their areas. And I think there's a huge convenience with being on the mainland. especially for those who still commute or have to travel, or have part-time here in Miami, part-time, elsewhere. I think it's important to get around easily. And, I think geographically, it's one of the best locations.
So now we're going to, with all candor, because it's not all about us stating about what's amazing. Now we are going to look at that luxury product, and we're going to throw a few under the bus. Sorry, guys, but this is the facts. This is what you want. This is what you want to avoid. You want to make good investment decisions and good buy decisions, and also you want to be aware of where the market's heading so you can understand. A few buildings that did not do well in the last year that we've seen a drop in dollar per square foot. 1000 Museum has not had a great one. We had a sale in that building earlier on in the year, but a year before we were seeing products sell for $1 million more than what it's trading or what it traded at the beginning of this year. And then obviously we've had Aston Martin, which has seen a pretty big cascade of the asking price to achieved sales price, touted as ultra luxury. And obviously then we've seen a situation with Missoni Bahia.
One in each area, yeah.
One in each area. 3 of my 3 least favorite buildings in the whole of Miami. I think it's important to say this. There's great opportunities out there, but there's huge risks too. Absolutely. These buildings, it went wrong. Where did it go wrong? What happened?
Well, I think I'll start off with 1000 Museum. I think it was very early on into the area because, again, people that are investing all that money in these properties, you don't want to just experience that level of luxury and of service and of security just within your building. You want to be able to go downstairs, go to a restaurant, go to a coffee shop, and feel like you are at home and you feel good about it. Mm-hmm. And I think that downtown has a lot of potential, but with that, a lot of risk, because a lot of these new construction buildings outside and within a couple of blocks of 1000 Museum are not the buildings that we would recommend to our clients.
Yeah, so the buildings around, you've got 10 Museum, you've got 900 Biscayne, you've got 888, you've got Marina Blue. Yep. These are not in the same class as that level. So the external infrastructure that existed and the demographic infrastructure around this building was not up to par with the building itself.
Yeah, and I think there are several other, minor details, but I think that that's a big risk when you talk about, going too far into the future when, the present hasn't had the chance to catch up. And, we were just there yesterday and we are seeing the very early stages of Miami World Center come to life. But again, it's not everyone's preference. And we deal with clients like this all the time. They want some sort of uniform design where you feel like you didn't just step into another neighborhood one block away.
Neighborhood's definition is it's got to feel like a neighborhood. And if it doesn't feel like a neighborhood, it just doesn't work. Not for the people who are moving in and it's making it their home.
Right.
Next one on the list I'm going to go to is Missoni Bahia.
Yes.
Right. Missoni Bahia, one of my least favorite buildings in the whole of Miami. Yeah. It's just the build quality and what we've experienced there in that building has really been exceptionally bad.
I agree.
What is the issues? I mean, beyond the build quality, there's some other legality issues that seem to be popping up with that building.
Yeah, that's almost expected, but my concern with Missoni Bahia is, it was originally marketed as someone who has a hospitality background, but you have to get very detailed oriented to how that's going to translate in the building once it does come to life. And I think they missed the mark. The finishes are also a bit more sterile, which, you buy a new construction building, you don't want to redo it as soon as you get it. You want to move into it and it's already ready. I think the layouts, the floor plans were not thoughtfully designed, in my opinion. There are several things. And the biggest one, and this isn't just Missoni Bahia, I think, again, going to downtown, now Edgewater, these are all great neighborhoods that have a lot of potential, but in today's day, it's still in that early stages of being developed. So the walkability is not there, similar to how it could be in downtown for either, a 1000 Museum. Aston Martin's a little better. They've done, those couple of blocks. It's hugging Brickell. So, I think finishes are important, and they didn't do that that well. Craftsmanship.
Yeah, luxury finishes have to be delivered. You have to look at the level of quality if you're going to sell it at luxury level. It's the same goes for homes. We have the same conversation that when we get into the housing market, we see product being marketed as ultra luxury, asking dollar per square foot that are what I call custom level dollar per square foot, $1,400, but they're being delivered at a spec level, something that's basic. It's not marble floors, it's cheaper porcelain.
Yeah.
It's not a $130,000 kitchen, it's a $30,000 kitchen. These are the examples that we see. Finally, Aston Martin. That's had a more difficult run. Why do you think we are not seeing that building? And there's a lot of property for sale right now. There's a lot of units for sale. I think there's over 30 units for sale in that project right now.
Yeah, it's a big concern. And, that project took a long time to deliver, right? So that anticipation only builds and builds. And so I think right off the bat, people got excited because it's the newest one, right? And I think that's normal. But once you see the level of craftsmanship and the quality of the finishes, and also just the location itself, it's a huge complex, almost 400 units on one of the smallest pieces of land, I think, in the entire urban core. And, it's an Aston Martin branded building. Naturally, you're going to have car lovers. If you're on one of the busiest streets in downtown and you've got cars coming in and out, it's only going to be a mess. And, when you are trying to exceed the record price per square foot, everything has to check out. It can't just be a name.
And I think that we systematically say that branding, naming is can be sometimes misdirectional. It has to stand on its own. You have to be able to remove the name from the building, and the building has to systematically be seen as, say, you know what, this is luxurious. Yeah. I can't be convinced just because it says something on the side of the building. And the floor plans. The floor plans, again, lives and dies by the floor plans. We've seen some challenges there with those floor plans. I want to finish on the rental market because the rental market is a very big animal within the Brickell area. Yeah. Are we seeing rental numbers go up, go down, or are they stable? What's going on with the rentals right now? And in conjunction with that, because it's money in, money out equation, what's the HOA fees doing? Are we seeing shifts in that market as well?
Right. So I think overall, the rental market is still strong. If we break it down, the rental properties below $15,000 a month had an increase in the number of properties rented and the average price per square foot, which I think is significant. I mean, that's a decent amount of the inventory in Brickell, right? The rental properties that were priced from $15,000 to $20,000, it was the same number of properties that was rented this year as it was last year. It was just slightly less. So the ones that are a little bit higher rented for a little bit less, but there's still relatively strong demand. And the rental properties for $20,000 or above was stronger in 2025 because in last year, there weren't any rentals. So I think there's a reason behind a lot of this because, the market is shifting. And I think initially people will think negatively, right? But I think with higher interest rates, higher HOA fees, people are now pivoting to rental properties as a temporary option because on a month-to-month basis, it's going to be less than if you buy something because property values are still strong and everything else has gone up a bit, right? Yep. So I think it's a fabulous approach for certain people. Now, some people don't believe in renting and they believe in buying. That's completely different. But I think to the opposite end of this trend, although we work with a lot of investors and we are representing them in listing and renting their properties, I think what'll set itself apart are units that are beautifully furnished, tastefully remodeled. Those will stand the test of time. But investors that are looking to get into the market today, it's going to be very challenging for them because they're most likely not going to break even. They're most likely going to have to put a little bit, every month. So I think that's why we're seeing them more on the sidelines. And,
people are always so conscious about holding cash. What we've seen, and again, your spouse is in the market, so you see this every day when we're looking at the stock market movements. And again, something to be said, in April, we saw a big hiccup. I don't call it a hiccup, but we saw a big bump in our market. One of the biggest losses of the last 5 years happened overnight. And that obviously shook a lot of buyers, and a lot of people will ask the question, okay, should I be holding cash at this time? Because yes, I can go out and buy a property as an investment, but what happens if there's another big bump in the market? Holding cash might lead me to, some sort of opportunity. Right. So we do see people holding back in that regards, and with interest rates being high as well, you know that you're carrying a mortgage, and then you're dealing with paying most of your mortgage payment is going to be interest, to be honest with you, for the first few years.
I agree.
I do believe generic product needs to be cautiously handled, as you do. We have these conversations with many clients out there that going out there and rushing in to just buy an apartment in Brickell because, hey, I get a pad in Miami.
Right.
There's good and bad through this market, but there's quite a good amount of optionality. There's lots of trades, there's lots of transactions, there's lots of willing, and this is the conclusions to this, lots of willing sellers to play ball with buyers out there. We just have to filter the good from the bad. We know the good, we know the bad, we know the formula. You have your expert. If you want to know what to buy, what to sell, what to invest in, call Shak. She will guide you accordingly. This is our look back from the last 6 months. I hope this has been informative for those out there. Along with this video is a full report compiled by Shakira Sanchez covering the Brickell market. As we say to everyone, if you have a specific unit that you want to know what it's worth, want to know how long it's going to take you to sell it, and what price, dollar per square foot you're going to achieve, give us a call. See our information below. We will come to you together. We will look at your unit. We'll assess it. Shakira will give you an accurate price. We'll give you a full marketing formula, and we will get it sold as you've done successfully for so many other sellers through the urban core over the last 6 months and well beyond and well before. Please watch our other videos as we cover the rest of the Miami markets. Shak, I know you speak to the other territory managers constantly around the system, knowing that everything is not selling in a bubble. I know that you talk to David Vasquez as one people transition out from Brickell, looking to, have kids and move into a family neighborhood. There's that natural transition out into places like Coconut Grove and Coral Gables. Please watch our other videos. You're going to find them massively informative. Thank you for watching, and please enjoy our other videos covering the mid-year report for 2025. Thank you.